leaving flowers on Wednesday near the bike path in Manhattan where a day earlier a motorist killed 8 people. Hiroko Masuike. The New York Times federal prosecutors on Wednesday filed charges accusing the driver in the Manhattan truck attack of carrying out a long-planned plot spurred by Islamic State propaganda videos to kill people celebrating Halloween. The charges, filed just over 24 hours after the deadliest terror attack on New York City since September 11, 2001, placed the case in the civilian courts even as President Trump denounced the American criminal justice system as a joke and a laughingstock. The charges described the driver, Sayfullo Saipov, 29, as a voracious consumer and meticulous student of ISIS propaganda, and detail how he said he was spurred to attack by an ISIS video questioning the killing of Muslims in Iraq. They say he began planning the attack about a year ago and, after taking a test run in a Home Depot rental truck last week, chose Halloween to carry it out because more people would be on the streets. The charges were filed in civilian court, and not the military system set up for foreign terrorists, a decision that flew in the face of Mr. Trump's broadsides against the criminal justice system. Mr. Trump said he was open to trying Mr. Saipov instead in military court at the American prison at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Mr. Saipov, accused of killing 8 people and injuring 12 in the attack, was pushed into a Manhattan federal courtroom in a wheelchair just after 6 p.m. on Wednesday. He sat slightly hunched, his railed-in body dressed in a gray shirt and gray pants. His hair stuck up slightly in the back. His hands and feet were chained. 5 guards stood behind him. A Russian interpreter spoke into a microphone, and Mr. Saipov, an immigrant from Uzbekistan, fitted an earpiece over his long beard and sharp features. When Magistrate Judge Barbara C. Moses asked if he understood the proceedings, Mr. Saipov, in a strong, clear, audible voice, responded in English, "Yes, ma'am." He nodded along as Judge Moses read his rights, but sat still and impassive when she read the charges against him: 1 count of providing material support to terrorists and 1 count of violence and destruction of a motor vehicle causing death. The vehicle charged, which carries the possibility of the death penalty, raised the prospect of a rare capital case being brought to trial in New York. David E. Patin, the chief federal public defender in New York City, who was representing Mr. Saipov, asked that he receive a daily change of dressing on the wounds he sustained after being shot by a police officer. "He is in a significant amount of pain," Mr. Patin said. The grievous injuries to victims, the scope of the inquiry, and Mr. Saipov's path toward extremism all began coming into view on Wednesday. The FBI, after saying it was trying to learn more about a second Uzbek man in connection with the attack, later announced that investigators had found the man, Muhammad Zwakidirov, 32, in New Jersey. It was not clear why federal authorities wanted to question him in connection with the attack. The authorities questioned Mr. Saipov after he waived his Miranda rights at a Manhattan hospital, the complaint says. They were also questioning Mr. Saipov's wife, Nozima Odilova, who was cooperating, law enforcement officials said. The couple live in Paterson, New Jersey, and have 3 children. As investigators looked into whether Mr. Saipov's Uzbek contacts may have handed him off to an ISIS operative, they pieced together parts of his past, law enforcement officials said. He attended a wedding in Florida of an Uzbek man who was under scrutiny by the FBI, but his attendance didn't trigger a separate investigation of him, the officials said. Muhammad Zwakidirov. Department of Justice investigators were still looking into whether Mr. Saipov had links to other federal counterterrorism inquiries. On Mr. Saipov's cell phone, FBI agents found 90 videos, including of ISIS fighters killing prisoners and of instructions for making an explosive device, according to the criminal complaint. They also found 3,800 images, among them some of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS. The complaint said Mr. Saipov reported being inspired in particular by a video in which Mr. al-Baghdadi questioned what Muslims in the United States and elsewhere were doing to respond to the killing of Muslims in Iraq. The FBI was uncovering details that sent agents on a foraging chase for leads. But several crucial facts remain unclear. It is not known if the FBI is still investigating the Uzbek man whose wedding Mr. Saipov attended. And as investigators built out concentric circles of his associates, they are still looking at whether Mr. Saipov had direct connections with ISIS operatives. Even so, the federal complaint filed against Mr. Saipov said he hewed closely to instructions last November in an ISIS magazine, Rumor, for a vehicle attack. After plowing his Home Depot rental truck down a bike path along the Hudson River that teemed with pedestrians and cyclists and crashing into a school bus, the complaint said, he jumped out of the truck, yelled Allahu Akbar, Arabic for God is great, and waved a paintball gun and a pellet gun. Rumor instructions called for followers to carry secondary weapons so they could continue an attack after crashing the vehicle, and Mr. Saipov did so. The complaint said he had a bag of knives in the truck but was unable to reach them before exiting. There was also a stun gun on the floor of the truck near the driver's seat, according to the complaint. Investigators found a handwritten note in Arabic and English 10 feet from the driver's side door, as the front of the truck sat smashed in, with soil strewn across the street that had been knocked out of a nearby planter. According to the complaint, the note detailed a pledge that echoed language used by ISIS Islamic supplication. It will endure. He appears to have followed almost to a T the instructions that ISIS has put out. John J. Miller, the New York Police Department's Deputy Commissioner for Intelligence and Counterterrorism, said at a news conference on Wednesday morning. Those who knew Mr. Saipov said he had been turning toward extremism for years since arriving in the United States in 2010. Mirikmat Mumanoff, a truck driver and community activist in Stowe, Ohio, said Mr. Saipov became aggressive and grew out his beard during his 3 years there. Mr. Mumanoff said he grew concerned about Mr. Saipov's temper, including how heated he became when he discussed American policies regarding Israel. Mr. Saipov created more unease when he moved to Florida. Abdul, an imam at a Tampa mosque who spoke on the condition that only his first name be used because he feared reprisals from other radicals, said he worried Mr. Saipov was misinterpreting Islam and urged him to calm down and study the religion. In the 2 months since Mr. Saipov decided to use the truck in order to inflict maximum damage against civilians, the complaint said, he began plotting assiduously. 9 days beforehand, he rented a Home Depot pickup truck so he could practice making turns, according to the complaint. He also rehearsed the route from New Jersey over the George Washington Bridge and down the west side of Manhattan in an Uber car he drove in the days before the incident, a law enforcement official said. On Tuesday, he asked to rent the Home Depot truck for a short while, though he never intended to return it, the complaint said. He planned to drive all the way south to the Brooklyn Bridge, but he made it only as far as Chambers Street. By the time his rampage ended, 6 people had been killed and 2 others would later die. 9 people remained hospitalized from injuries on Wednesday, officials said, 4 of them critically injured but in stable condition. The injuries ranged from the amputation of multiple limbs to serious head, neck and back trauma. The complaint said Mr. Saipov wanted to display ISIS flags on the truck and decided against it to avoid drawing attention. But lying in his hospital bed, he continued his quest. The complaint said he asked law enforcement officials to put up the ISIS flag and stated that he felt good about what he had done. Reporting was contributed by Rukmani Calamachi, Sarah Maslin Near, Eric Schmidt, Michael Schwartz, Ashley Southall, Vivian Wang and Benjamin Weiser. Susan Cibici and Doris Burke contributed research. A version of this article appears in print on November 2, 2017, on page A1 of the New York edition with the headline Driver's Rampage Was Time to Kill, Prosecutors Say.